Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Garbaugust, the waning days of Garbaugust 2024, Garbaugust 3D, a great BookTube event created by Ollie at Criminali, where he gets us all to read trash in the month of August. I love Garbaugust, absolutely love it. I look forward to it. I have always in my reading life maintained an element of trash. And I don't mean the kind of trash that I've been complaining about in the last week, where some new release, some much touted work of so-called literary fiction, or a crappy flybone piece of fake history, it gets to me along the normal course of professional events, and I read it and it's terrible. I don't mean that kind of trash. I've always kept a kind of sweet spot for trash of the other kind, the enjoyable kind, in my diet. I've always enjoyed it. I enjoyed it before there was Garbaugust. I enjoyed it before there was BookTube. I enjoyed it before there was YouTube. I enjoyed it before there was an internet. I enjoyed it before there was an Ollie at Criminali. My enjoyment of it originates in the pulps and the characters that came out of the old Weird Tales world of science fiction and science fantasy. It originated then, where I was reading and gobbling up those things. I was absolutely loving John Carter Mars, Conan the Barbarian. But I was aware, the whole time I was doing the one mental gymnastic move that dude bros tend not to do today, which is, okay, you read those things, you gobble them up, you love them, you get the posters, you buy the collectible paperbacks and whatnot. But then you do the one extra mental gymnastic of reminding yourself that this stuff is terrible. Which people don't do anymore. I did that all along. So I was still enjoying the heck out of that while I was reading the latest translation of the Aeneid, or the latest translation of Thomas Mann, or something like that. While I was reading the latest letter collection of some, intellectual in Norway or whatever. I was still reading those things and loving them. Because they're the good kind of trash. They're the kind of trash that has a heart, that believes in itself. That's terrific. That mental bit of gymnastics is what stopped me from being resentful when Thuvia Maid of Mars was never on any greatest science fiction novels of all time. I looked at those lists, and instead of that particular mind frame of, if I like it, it must be great, a mind frame that has always existed with readers but that got a huge shot in the arm with Harry Potter, instead of that, I would look at those lists and say, well, of course it wouldn't be on there. It's not good. But I love it. I love it so. And today's pick, last night's addition to my reading for Garbaugust, is a callback to those times. This is a callback to 1965, and to a novel that I read when everybody was reading it, when it was so popular. OMG, so popular. And it's Hotel by Arthur Haley. Which I would say, once upon a time, I would have said, all of you will know this book. I would also have said, all of you will know the Aaron Spelling TV show, which ran for a long time. I don't think it got all the way to 7 seasons to syndication, but it ran for more than 1 season, that's for sure. But I don't expect any of you to remember this book, and I certainly don't expect you to remember a TV series that's 50 years old, as mind-boggling as that is for me to think of. No, instead it's just an old airplane potboiler. It's an airport novel, very much so. An airport novel that, it's a little extra ironic to call it an airport novel when you're talking about Arthur Haley, who, as much as anyone, actually reinvented garbage along those lines for massive commuter consumers. Although he and his wife worked really hard to get this to the notice of everybody, not just the commuters, not just the 915 from Chappaqua. He worked really hard on this book. It's the story of a hotel, the St. Gregory Hotel, which is up to its ears in debt. It cannot meet its mortgage payments. It cannot, as the saying goes, cover its nut. And that means it's going to be on the auction block. The thing that I've forgotten a number of things about this book. I haven't read it in 50 years, 60 years. But reading it last night was tons of fun. I bought this paperback specifically for Garbaugust and just chucked it on the pile. I'd forgotten a lot about this in those intervening years. Probably blocked it out. One of the things I forgot about it is how tight the time frame is. This is not the sprawling epic of the type that was written in 1965. This is set over the course of a few days. I also forgot how tightly plotted it is. It is extremely tightly plotted. It's no wonder to me. I read an interview somewhere that Haley did not just dash this off. So many times in Garbaugust we've seen books where I strongly suspect, and if you read them you would strongly suspect, that the author just sat down in his wife beater with a bottle of rye bourbon next to him and just pounded out one draft of the book on a manual typewriter in a cheap flophouse and never looked at it again. I don't get that impression with this book. I seem to remember in an interview that Haley took his time writing this. I believe it. Because this is tightly plotted, it's tightly paced. It's the story of a whole bunch of people involved with this seemingly doomed hotel. The main character, the hero, is the general manager of the hotel. But there are also the two women in his orbit, one of whom would very much like to be Mrs. Manager of the hotel. There are little bit parts, little bit characters. There are major characters. There's a thief, for instance. One of the more charismatic characters in the book is a guy who makes a habit of fleecing hotels, of worming his way into rooms, worming his way into confidences, getting extra keys. There's a married couple from the British nobility staying in the hotel, not to sojourn in sunny New Orleans, but because they are fleeing scandal. They have killed someone with their car, and they don't want it known. They don't want the whole thing to explode on them. There's a bad guy. He's on the staff at the hotel, and in the course of the book, the book does build to a series. All those multiple plot lines build to a series of climaxes, and one of those climaxes involves a guest at the hotel who is very nearly raped. It's again another element of this book that I forgot is how explicit it is, at a time when 1965 was pretty much the 50s. I'd forgotten that element of it. And there's a guy who works for the hotel who's pretty much involved in getting the local Utes, the hooligans that almost do that. He's the bad guy of the book, although, I guess you could be indulged for thinking that British noble couple are bad too, since they're trying to cover up a double homicide. And also there's a shadowy, I won't say evil, there's a shadowy threat in this book, because the guy who owns a massive hotel chain knows that the St. Gregory's is in trouble and might be up on the auction block, and is ready to swoop in at the end of that week when the hotel cannot pay its mortgage. When that happens, in other words, just days from the opening of the book. I'd forgotten that, and I appreciated it. Boy, oh boy, though, is this bad. Oh boy, is this bad. It is, it's written with heart. I'll give it that. I'd forgotten that as well. And I'm not saying that it's bad because of all the rotten things that it partakes of. There's quite a bit of that. There's a lot of sexism here, and none of the female characters in this book, with one exception, are actual three-dimensional human beings, nor are they meant to be, nor would anyone want them to be, including themselves. And, oh my God, an element of this book that I had completely forgotten was the racism. I had completely forgotten that there's a among the many, many other things that are happening here at the hotel, there is a dentistry convention. And it's big business for the hotel. We learn a lot about how hotels work here. I imagine that was a large amount of the time that Haley put into this, was researching how hotels work, how they actually make their money, and what kind of arrangements they have with their tenants, from the ones who are just staying a weekend to the ones who are living there. There's an incredible scene. Actually, it's an incredible little subplot where one of the dentists at that convention is a black man, and he's refused entry. The hotel doesn't. The hotel is whites only. And he has a little plot line of his own. And I shouldn't call the book racist, because it's obvious that Haley is outraged on his behalf. And one of the heroes of the book is a young black man, who actually thwarts that rape and does a whole bunch of other things in the course of the book, and whose future we are meant to care about. So I won't say that the book is racist, but boy, does it reflect the racism of the times. Oh my, does it ever. A little bit more bare-knuckle than I thought. Don't get me wrong, it's still terrible. It's absolutely terrible. There were works of fiction in the 1960s that obviously were addressing issues like women's rights or racism. Let's not mistake ourselves that Hotel by Arthur Haley is one of them. It isn't. But one of those long-term residents, this hotel has long-term residents, people that, one guy in particular who is not in the best of health, he has a room, he just lives there. And the staff is rather fond of him. And that element of the book, I remember that was really that was on the forefront of my mind when I read it last a million years ago. Was this got a paperback reprint in the 1990s that was ugly. Just a lot of Arthur Haley got really ugly paperback reprints in the 1990s, and then he's been gone ever since, and I'm sure he will be gone. I'm sure that you'll never be able to read him again, which is unfortunate, because when he dug into a subject. He is kind of the institutional version of James Michener, in that you get multiple plot lines, multiple perspectives, and instead of Michener gives you a panoramic view of a place, Haley tends to give you a panoramic view of an institution, whether it's a hotel or a hospital or a newspaper, and that element of this book is really interesting. I imagine it's all changed now, but it was really interesting. This was entertaining to read. In other words, I didn't for a minute doubt why this became such a huge bestseller. This changed Arthur Haley's life completely, and I think there's an argument to be made. I once encouraged a student to write a thesis on this. That this also changed American publishing, that it changed the nature of American fiction, popular fiction, for a long time, and maybe even still is ruling the roost there. So I really enjoyed it, but at every point it was reminding me that it is trash. At every single point, including the ultimate demonstration of that. You've got that horrible hotel employee, you've got that horrible corrupt English lord who's trying to cover up a vehicular homicide. You've got that good-for-nothing, lovable scamp of a hotel thief. You've got a couple of other characters who are causing problems in one way or another as the action of the novel is spiraling upwards to that fateful day, to Friday, when the hotel cannot meet when the hotel will go out of business, when they will not be able to pay their mortgage. And the vultures are circling. So everyone knows that. Everyone knows that day is coming up. And you've got all these plot lines spiraling up to that climax. I don't know if you're ever going to read Hotel by Arthur Haley. I find it hard to believe you ever will. If you are ever going to read this book, then mute the video now, because I'm going to spoil something about the ending. I can't not. When I'm talking about Garbaugust, I can't not talk about the fundamental demonstration. Wait a minute, did the screen just show a thumb? Did it show a thumb when I could have swear I saw an icon on the screen. What is going on with YouTube? But anyway, okay, you've muted the video now if you care about spoilers. All of those different characters who have all of those different things going on all get on the same elevator, and it goes into free fall. It falls down the elevator shaft with all of them inside. It's like it's Arthur Haley just explicitly at his typewriter saying, "Oh, I don't know how to wrap these things up. Let's just throw them all down an elevator shaft." That's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does. And believe it or not, even though this is not physics, it's not how physics work, they have different survival outcomes. Some of them are killed instantly. Some of them live. Some of them have not a scratch. Some of them are hurt. Okay, there's that icon again. The gods are downvoting. Maybe Arthur Haley is. Maybe he's still alive, and he's downvoting my video. What's the matter, baby? We're getting thumbs down, Bean. Is that you? If you bring this network's ratings down, we'll do a special on you. What's the matter? You want to come down from there and get on your chair? Oh. Are you going to hop over to your chair? You are. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to make your bed? Or are you just going to lay down like an old lady? Oh, you're going to make your bed. While we have an ear-piercing siren. Oh, you're getting the whole Hyde Cottage experience here. Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. Oh. There's also there's something else. There's one other thing that I can spoil in this book. I won't. I feel bad about even spoiling the elevator shaft. I just had to mention it to somebody. I'd forgotten I just had forgotten that Haley does that. He was actually hammy enough to do that. That would have embarrassed even Robert E. Howard, but he just goes for it. There is one other thing that finishes this book. I won't spoil that, but I had a blast, and that is the whole point, right? I might have blurred that point several times in my Garbaugust 2024, but the whole point here is to enjoy yourself. The whole point is to read trash that's so much fun that you're smiling the whole time you're reading it. Okay, well, I did that with Hotel by Arthur Haley. If I ever find other mass market paperbacks of his, any of his other books, I'll grab them. Absolutely grab them. With these old vintage covers, I don't want the boring ones from the 90s. I certainly recommend this. I certainly recommend it. I definitely do. But that is going to do it for today. That is my what? We just have a couple of Garbaugusts left. This was enormous fun. So I'm hoping that tonight's pick will be, no idea what that will be. I'll wrap this up and I will check back with you tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.